The majority of Armenians perished in the desert, with only a few surviving the extreme conditions forced upon them. Even today, the desert, Der el-Zor, is littered with the bones of Armenians who perished between 1915 and 1918.
Good evening and welcome to the rest of the news. A lot's going on. Our special guest today is State Representative retired Ed Holloway. So Ed, we appreciate you being here.
My pleasure.
And a lot going on. What did you think about the recent primary?
Well, the primary really sets the tone for November, and there was a lot of things that happened, a lot of changes that took place. Jamie Comer, the former agricultural commissioner, was elected the majority down in over 65% of the vote in the first district, so it looks like we'll ensure of a continuation of a good congressman in that area.
Yeah.
And the rest of the state is some very little changes at all, and it's a national election at the U.S. Senate. Rand Paul got over 80-some-odd% of the vote in the primary, and it sets the stage for November. And Jim Gray of Lexington, a former member of the construction family and mayor, is a member. Well, he's a gay, and there's a lot of support from the gay community. And that'll be the lineup for November. And in other areas, there were no surprises. Two surprises in Jefferson County. A long-time incumbent, Tom Reiner, was defeated by a former city council member, and Ron Krim, another state representative of long standing, was defeated. But other than that, most all incumbents will be. And the balance of things that go into the November election will make it very interesting. But the thing that overshadows all of that is the fact that our local elections will be influenced by the presidential election. And that traditionally, and it looks like, classic example was the primary with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And Bernie lost by 1/2 of one vote per precinct in Kentucky, which is a phenomenal for epitome of a close race. And that's going to go on. So the two conventions, so both the Republican and the Democratic convention, are going to be interesting to watch, and that'll, of course, set the stage for November. Hillary has made a statement once that as far as the economy is concerned, she's going to draft Bill Clinton to handle the economy, and that's an interesting twist. Always alarmed me the very small number that vote in these primaries that make the selection that all the voters are going to have to deal with in November. So a small percentage of people pick the candidates that you're going to be forced to choose from when you get to November, and that's always a real problem.
Well, I was just wondering, do we have any idea how many Democrats voted in the Democrat presidential primary as compared with the Republicans?
Well, there was a larger number. In the presidential, of course, there was no Republican vote at all for that because they had a caucus earlier this year, and in that process, they selected the candidates and the delegates to the convention. As far as the Democrats were concerned, Hillary had concentrated on the black community in the west end of Louisville and also in Bowling Green, and that was the one that gave her the edge as far as the final vote in the primary. That gave just 1/2 of one vote each precinct.
It was almost a tie.
It was amazing that because early on in the reports that took place that night was the fact that there was switching back and forth, depending where it came. And Bernie was ahead up until last, and then they come in with more votes from Jefferson County, and that was enough to tip the balance to Hillary. But he also won the one out in West Coast in Washington, the primary out there. So things, and of course California and all those, it's not over yet. And it looks like there's a number of people that are asking Bernie, if he doesn't make it through the convention, to run as a third-party candidate, which would be another wrinkle that is unlike any other. Is he
considering that?
Right. So it's really a critical thing that everybody become more informed and more critical in the way they approach it, not because of, I like somebody, but understand who they are, what they are, and what it's going to represent for the United States. Because we have serious problems, both at the state level and the federal level. The incumbent indebtedness of each area of the states and at the federal level is unsustainable. And somebody's going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to find somebody who, rather than feel good and get emotional and all this based on emotional feelings, you're going to have to base it on the facts of what's going to be good for our survival as a nation.
Right, right. As you were talking about factors that are going to influence the presidential election in November, there are a couple of things that came to mind. One is, as you know, President Obama has pushed for letting men and boys into the women's restroom and locker room and showers. And we've gotten a number of calls about people that are, upset about the idea that they're going to put men and boys in the girls' restrooms and showers and locker rooms. So we've made this petition. This is a petition that we could send to anybody in our viewing audience today that it basically just says that we support our governor who is opposing this edict from Obama that you got to have allow boys and men into the girls' restrooms. So we'd be glad to send this out to anyone. You can get your whole church signed up, your neighborhood, your relatives, and people at work, and everyone seems to be very upset about this. You just call our number 893-2444, and we'll send that out to you right away. 893-2444, and we'll send you a copy of that petition that you can circulate.
This is another classic example of the breakdown of the morals and the Christian beliefs of this country that's been going on for quite some time. The Obama administration issued that against the Constitution and everything else by another executive order saying you will admit transgenders into any area that you want. Yeah. And I heard recently a comment that I'm going to quote, which probably shouldn't, but it said that Kennedy put a man on the moon, Obama put a man in the restrooms. And I think that very good. Sums it up. And in that process, the breakdown, and anybody can declare themselves either a male. I'm born a man, but today I feel like I'm a woman. Yeah. So therefore, I have the right to do these things. And there will be our element of our society will take advantage of these opportunities. Absolutely. The perverts, the child molesters, and others will find this as a wonderful opportunity for them. Just put on a dress and say that that's how they feel. That I'm a man, I'm a woman trapped in a man's body. Yeah. Then you have no right to question them. And this is the most idiotic thing, but this is what slowly, like a cancer, has been eating at America for the last probably 2 or 3 decades, and it increases. And each one of these is another layer that makes it harder and harder for anybody to how do you unscramble an egg? You get back to the point where the tradition of America and everything else is in jeopardy. And unless we take advantage of things like this petition that you just mentioned and have everybody sign that
Yeah.
and take an active role, because without that, you're going to be buried alive, and then you'll wonder what happened and how, and it's too late.
Well, that's right. So if you believe that men should not be and boys should not be in the women's restroom and showers and locker room, we need to hear from you right away, and we'll get this out. We need to work together to, save our children and putting them at risk. And this is the petition. If you call us 893-2444, we'll get that right out to you. 893-2444. You can call right now.
Right.
And now the other thing that concerns me about this election, like you say, our country seems to be at a tipping point. This election is so important.
Right.
President Obama is trying to get more and more Muslims into our country. And not only that, but all of the suffering Christians in the Middle East that are having their heads cut off and, really tortured, he won't let any of them into the country.
Well, this is a question that has been going on for quite some time, and people fail to recognize the problem that's presented there. The Syrians that we've been bringing in and others do not want to become Americans, and they're putting an additional burden on our school systems because they do not want to learn English. You have to provide an interpreter, and others, they wear their traditional Arab and Muslim garb, and they're now being said that they're threatened by other children in the school as bullies, and they want things taken care of, and it's becoming more and more of a problem here. And if you look at Europe is a classic example of what's going on and what can happen here. All of the European community are trying to deal with it. They don't know how to touch it, don't know how to do it. They don't know how to stop the influx of more and more people coming in from all throughout the Middle East, and then from Libya to Syria to Iran and all that, and Africa. They're coming in by boatloads into Italy and then into Greece, and filtrating up all through all of Europe. Classic example of how bad things are. You've got the Great Britain.
Yeah.
The English, for example, they elected a Muslim mayor of London, and they're now a lot of people are jokingly calling it Londistan. And in that thing, but there's also areas in several other cities in England where we have what we call no-go zones.
Yeah.
And the no-go zone is that they're run by the Muslims under Sharia law, and the law enforcement, other agencies are not allowed in the area. And it continues to grow at an alarming rate all over Europe, and nobody wants to talk about it because nobody has a solution. Nobody wants to stop the influx because of compassionate reasons, but at the same time, you're dealing with an enemy.
Yeah. And if it's compassion, then why is it that they won't let any of the Christians in?
Exactly. And this is another problem because Islam is not a religion of peace. And to quote the scriptures, the verses such as, "Fight those who do not believe in Allah. Fight and slay the pagans wherever ye find them, and seize them, beleaguer them, and lie in wait for them at every stature of war." So this is the kind of thing that's going on, and you can't combat it in a traditional sense, because a lot of it goes back to the end of the Ottoman Empire and the Paris Peace Conference in 1919, where the British and the French took the area and drew all these artificial boundaries and created the names of all these countries, and Mesopotamia and other areas that had been ruled by tribal law were split, fractured. Families, religion, all these things were broken up, and then ever since that had happened, they've been frustrated. Now, with the creation of Al-Qaeda and Islam, the ISIS, all of those are now giving them an opportunity to pay back to these other societies, the West, which they hate, and they hate America as well as Europe and the rest of them because of what has happened to them over really less than 100 years. And in their culture, that was like yesterday, and today is what it is. And Winston Churchill recognized that. And he made a statement that facts are better than dreams. And in the real world, we must deal with the fact that Islamic supremacism, because the jihadist religion, has every intention of dealing with us. But we can only defeat them if we resolve to see them for what they are.
Right, which Obama is not willing to see them.
The truth of it, and recognize them for what they are.
Yeah.
And we've got problems at every level, at every state. And right now, the makeup of the United States, 40% of the population of the U.S. is now an immigrant of one type or another. And none of those are wanting to assimilate into the American culture all of the things that made this country the envy of the world,
right.
The success economically and otherwise, and individual freedom had never reached such a level before in the history of man. And now they've in the process of destroying that.
Well, we're sitting here talking about this problem, but it's hard to imagine how bad it really is. Exactly. Now, we have some footage that we'll be showing you a little later, but them blowing up things and rioting and screaming and pushing people around and beating up people and blocking the streets and all of the terrible things that are actually going on there. And we'll be trying to show them that in just a minute. And the other thing that's on this video is the survivors of the Armenian genocide, where the Muslims came in and practically wiped out an entire nation, 1.5 million people. I think it was 1915. And there were a few people that survived, and they're telling the story of what happened. And, as I was watching that, I just stumbled across it on YouTube. But I thought, this could happen to America.
Right, exactly.
And it's really an eye-opener of what the Muslims have done in Armenia and in Europe right now.
See that what he says is in the hearts of every government in Europe. We can see that everything that he says is in the heart of every disbeliever. Islam will dominate.
This poster is basically showing how we will transform Buckingham Palace.
Multiculturalism and political correctness have backfired badly. The hardcore Islamists have not been assimilated into society. But Britain's confidence in democracy.
And there's also a section where they're stoning a woman.
Well, this is a traditional way of dealing with people. Everything from adultery to violating the dress codes and other things, it automatically becomes a death sentence. And if you convert to any other religion, that's an automatic death sentence. All of these things are incumbent on the Muslim to enforce. And we had it happening in Cairo, Egypt, where they were throwing people from the rooftops into the streets for being non-believers or non-conformists. And all of these things are dealt with within the Islamic religion.
Honor killings.
Honor killings.
Yes.
Honor killings rather than mercy. There's no mercy at all.
No mercy.
The honor killings, people will actually,
unbelievable.
A mother will hold her daughter down and her father will beat her to death because she had the audacity to go out with a Christian man and those kind of things. And we are not dealing with that. We're not even prosecuting it because it's a part of their religion. That's their custom. That's their right as a Muslim.
So our Constitution goes out the window so that they can beat each other up.
Exactly. And this is the kind of thing that's happened multiple times here in the United States. There's very little publicity about it.
Yeah.
And unless you're in the neighborhood and you see what happened and knew what happened, it's very, very hard for other people to know about.
You know, Ed, as you were talking, the idea came to my mind. Things are worse than we would imagine as a casual observer.
Right. This is the problem we have because the average American believes in our traditions, believes in our custom. They want to raise their family, educate their children, pay their taxes, do the work, and live their life alone, and not have all this kind of interference. But it's coming at you at every level. I'm looking at the changes that have taken place in Obamacare.
Oh, yes.
And at the new effective parts of it that became effective in January 1 of
without
this year.
any vote.
Exactly. And it's continued, and now the average American is suffering. And let me give you an example. For example, if you're working in a factory or someplace else, they're now transferring the additional cost of the medical care that they were providing before. Portions of that premium is now passed on to you so that your paycheck is less than it was the week before. And because there's no increase in your income and salary, your net spendable income is declining. Inflation is running 2 and 3% in food, clothing, and other items that you have to survive. And people are feeling this, they're seeing this, and they're frustrated, and they don't know why.
Yeah, I saw an article the other day where it said Obama was taking taxpayers' money and giving it to the insurance companies because they can't seem to make it with all these free medical care, that they are kind of losing money. So Obama's going to give them a bailout.
Right. And as more and more people fall into what I call the category of poverty, they're going into Medicaid.
Yeah.
And Medicare itself is being attacked at several levels. And all of these things are happening simultaneously. And it's like, again, I use the analogy of a cancer. It keeps growing, and eventually it'll be fatal. And when you have speechwriters from the White House on a public television program laughing about the fact that they were the ones that wrote the language that said, you can keep your doctor, you can do this, you can keep your insurance, you can do this, and all of it was a lie.
That was Jonathan Gruber, I guess.
Well, there were several of them, and they were having a laugh about and discussing it, the fact that they were able to con the people.
The dumb voters don't know what's going on.
Exactly, and they don't know it till they see their paycheck or they get a bill through the mail. And those are the kind of insidious things that are happening. And it's not only at that level, it's every level. The legal community and others are frustrated. The judicial is being stacked. And another critical part of the next national election in November is whoever the president is going to have the opportunity to control the Supreme Court with the possibility of 3 and maybe as many as 4 replacements on that will affect the country for decades to come. So these are the kind of questions that have to be resolved and kept in mind by the average voter and not based on something, well, I don't like that person or I don't like the way they comb their hair. It has to be who can stop and hopefully reverse some of this trend. But when you have an administration like the Obama administration that has issued literally thousands of executive orders and all of the growth of regulations that have imposed on business and all that, all of the jobs that are losing and leaving is not because the people want to. It's a question of either that or survival will go out of business. And the increased number by the EPA and by other agencies of government is strangling every little, and particularly small business who cannot afford the cost of all of these administrative costs.
Well, I tell you, it's this election, some people say this may be the most important election in our lifetime.
Very much so. Very
It's
much
sort
so.
of, we're on the brink of,
Right.
if it goes over, then we may never recover.
Well, there are 29 other great civilizations that are buried in the past. And unless you understand and study history, you wouldn't know, but every one of those fell not from an outside source, but internally through the kind of issues that we're talking about. The names are changed, but the results are the same. And they literally were destroyed from the inside. And it couldn't happen to them either, but it did. And the same fate for America unless we wake up as individuals, as Christians and others that get in there.
Get involved.
You can become, it's like onward Christian soldiers. And
Yeah.
it's a war that we have to win. If not, then it's all over.
That's right. That's right. Well, I want to review just a little bit here. Here is the petition that goes to Governor Matt Bevin, who is opposing the Obama administration directive that they have to allow boys and men's into the bathrooms and shower rooms and locker rooms, all of that. And we want to give you a copy of that. And if you can make copies, you give it to everyone in your neighborhood, and your relatives, and your church, and at work, and everything. This is a lot of people are calling about that, and we're going to give you the number in just a minute. And the other thing is the video that we're going to be showing you. It's a DVD, and it's free. It's all free, and we'll send it to you, and you can show that to everybody you know and give it out to people and help them to realize just how serious the situation really is here, how the Obama administration may be bringing 100,000 Muslims and no Christians. And what's going on there? And what's going on with all these men and boys in the girls' restroom? I mean, the whole thing is crazy. So give us a call right now. The number is 893-2444. That's 893-2444. And call right away. If there's nobody there, there'll be an answering machine. And you can leave your name, address, and phone number, and we'll get back with you and get you the petitions and the DVD. And it's really serious what's going on, and it's time to get involved.
And everyone should get themselves as informed as possible and study, and then share that information with every one of their friends and family. Because, again, it's a basic question of survival.
It's really serious, and we really appreciate Ed Holloway being here, former state representative, and giving us your insights on all of this and the election. And we're about out of time, so we appreciate you listening and invite you to tune in the next week for the rest of the news.